All right, I'm going to talk to you about the challenges that we face in Joint Housing Solution Group, what we're doing to overcome them, and where we currently are in the process of evaluating options on the marketplace, what's commercially available. We're also going to look at the range of capabilities that we have. And we're also briefly, as we mentioned, talk about our laboratory up at the National Emergency Training Center located in Emmitsburg, Maryland. We were established right after Katrina when we faced difficulties of identifying viable alternatives to the traditional housing that FEMA had within its inventory, the park model, the manufactured home, and travel trailer, or the park model. And so we were established to look at alternatives. As you remember, Katrina, we had a lot of difficulty trying to house people in that catastrophic disaster, and so we had no internal research and development core that would continue to look at housing outside in the marketplace. And so we were set up to go out and do that market research, that research and development into the marketplace. We set up a couple guiding principles within the process of going out and evaluating. We looked at the timeliness, the livability, the range of use, and cost. And all these things are important characteristics in looking at a unit to make sure it would fit within the FEMA housing needs and requirements that we have for housing. I think I'll touch a little bit on right here. Timeliness. How fast can we install that unit out in the field? If it takes a long time to get manufactured, to transport, to install, it really does not become a viable option for FEMA. Livability. We all know that if you're living in a unit that just does not work in terms of comfort, accessibility needs, it's just not going to work long term, especially if you're in there for a long period of time after disaster. You've lost a lot of your belongings or your house, loved ones. That can be a real big issue. Range of use. Some units are very good in urban environments. Some units are not very good in rural environments. And with FEMA, we have disasters across the board. We have disasters in rural environments. We have disasters in urban environments. And so a unit that can be used across environments makes it much more applicable or appealing to us in terms of what we can utilize it for. And then the other thing we can't forget is cost. How well is this unit priced out in terms of installation, life cycle cost? We don't want to buy a $1 million home that does everything we need. It just doesn't work out practical-wise. We set up a online database to have manufacturers submit their information about their product. And it came formulated into about a 225 questionnaire about their unit. It talks about building codes, amount of escapes, cost of installation, the amount of man hours to install, how fast you can produce them. And that gives us a read on how well the unit would fit into our requirements. We rate them from that initial thing and determine what ones look very promising. From that, we go out and we do a on-site field visit. This is quite extensive. Most of our manufacturers will tell us that it's very exhaustive. It gets down to a lot of detail. But that gives us the ability to know how well that unit is going to perform within FEMA. And we go through several evolutions of this. So this is the first evolution, then we go out and do a field visit, and then we do the laboratory, which is our third assessment. We've done 50 field assessments. So a unit that is very, very promising, we go out and verify the information they provided us. This usually is preceded by a conference call or two to kind of work through some of the issues to make sure that they're where they say they are. We produce these little fact sheets on the units, and we keep those as a library so that in the event of a catastrophic disaster and other disasters, for example, we've provided some of these for other federal agencies that do international aid to help them out with some of our research so we can really leverage our research. And you can see we've been quite almost across the United States looking at manufacturing facilities all across the United States and actually internationally too. So we have a wide range of capabilities, and some people will say, well, what kind of possibilities can you go into? You have rural, you have urban, what else is there? Well, we also have obviously, obviously mentioned urban, inaccessible sites. In California, in the wildfires, we were faced with a lot of inaccessible sites, small roads that went up and sprawled out into a large manufactured home park. And getting those units up there, and those units were up there that were brought up there were a long time ago. Getting those units up there can be very difficult, and obviously we have lots of area in the country that getting those units up there. So we have flat packs that we look at in terms of giving accessibility. This also gives us great shipping options for remote areas. Immediate sheltering. Steve touched on this. We have the immediate need of providing life safety, life-preserving needs right away. If we can bring in something that can serve as a shelter and then transition to a home, that is really that's beneficial to the survivor, that we can provide them good home or shelter right away and then move over to housing. We have temporary to permanent. HPP has been working a lot on that in terms of providing something that would be transformable into permanent housing. We do this a lot in FEMA right now, the private sites, where we take a unit and install it on a person's private home. While they do repairs to their house, they can stay in the unit and make repairs, and they can stay in their community, which is really important to them and to the politicians, to make sure that they keep that community together and get it back on its feet. Unprepared sites. We faced this in Ike. We had large areas of electrical grid that was not coming back up online. In Katrina also, we had a power company that was faltering in terms of its ability to provide power after the disaster. So we had faced with, the grid that was not able to come up. We have units that can come up and provide solar array and provide power that way, so we can get people back into their community faster. So we have a lot of different options. How does this all translate into what the marketplace is providing right now? So we have durability, indoor air quality. I'll talk about that in just a second. Timeliness, we mentioned that how fast can we get them produced, how fast can we get them installed. Storability, we store these things in storage sites. We're going to continue to keep doing that. Can the units be stored a long time? There's a lot of issues related to that. Accessibility. Most people who buy manufactured homes do not consider this as a thing. We, in the federal government, we have to meet the needs of a lot of our survivors from disasters. And some of them have accessibility needs, and we need to meet those needs. And of course, range of use, we kind of just talked about that. Indoor air quality. Following Katrina, we ran into some issues with indoor air quality. And in response to that, FEMA developed a protocol to ensure that we had much better air quality in our units going forward. So we have a very strict protocol in terms of indoor air quality. So these are our unique requirements, and they translate into what they mean to the manufacturer. And these things can be quite difficult given engineering standards and principles that we have out there in codes. So you can see that these all translate into very difficult challenges in the marketplace. And that's one of the things that we go through, and we exhaustively look through a lot of manufacturers. Last year we installed 6 units at our NATC, National Emergency Training Center laboratory. This is a training center just much like any other federal training center. We have students that come in for a week or two at a time, and they volunteer to stay in the units. As part of their volunteer requirement, they have to complete a 75-question survey on the unit. And we ask questions such as, what kind of housing unit were you in before? Is this something that's acceptable? So, for example, someone that was staying in a 10-acre farm and they're staying in a small D&D unit here may not feel as comfortable. So we wanted to kind of put that into reference. We also looked at some other livability issues, as you can see. We've deactivated or uninstalled a few of these items. We've uninstalled RCAL, and we've uninstalled the TL unit to make way for 3 new manufacturers that we're going to be installing, and that's these. Green Horizon is the one that we mentioned that has the solar component to it. We will have a solar component up at NATC. It can operate off the grid, much like a hybrid Prius car, if you're familiar with those. They operate on solar power. When the solar power does not meet the demand, they draw from the batteries, and then when the battery is not able to meet the demand, a generator will kick on and resupply the batteries. Our first foray into urban housing, urbanized multiple dwelling units, is the global disaster housing. This is a 3-stack style unit that will actually be installed next week, and this is our first foray into that. And there's some issues that relate to this in terms of accessibility, staircases. This is going to be something very new for FEMA, and we're going to be looking into this up at the laboratory. And finally, a mid-Gulf unit, which is very similar to the Louisiana cottage that's located with the HPP program. All of these can be stacked. However, only one is going to be stacked in our laboratory. This provides us great range of use for our disasters, so we can put these in a rural environment or a very urban environment. So where are we going from here? We're going to continue to search for units. We're going to continue to search for units or solutions that may not be units. That's a very important aspect of this. So we're going to keep looking at smaller footprints, units that can do a wider range of use, that have better costs and all that stuff. We're going to be working with other groups. Joint Housing Solution Group is the interdisciplinary group. We have representatives from HUD, from NIBS, National Institute of Building Sciences, and from other groups. And so we've been working with, obviously, New York City, we will be up here in a little bit. The Department of Navy, they've been doing some containerized testing. We've been working with them a bit. And then, obviously, HUD with their disaster housing standards. So that's about it. I'm going to transfer it over to Cynthia.